Lyra stood motionless before the observation window, her seven-fingered hand pressed against the transparent barrier separating her from the bustling New York street below. After 3 Earth years studying human civilization as her planet's ambassador, she still found herself captivated by the casual physical contact that humans engaged in daily. The handshakes, the hugs, the kisses exchanged on cheeks. "Fascinating, isn't it?" she whispered to herself, her voice carrying the distinctive melodic trill of the Astrian people. On her homeworld, such physical contact was reserved only for medical examinations or the clinical reproduction process that happened once in an Astrian's life cycle. The diplomatic quarters on the 87th floor provided perfect isolation while allowing her to observe. Her slender form, standing nearly 7 feet tall with skin that shimmered with a subtle blue luminescence, would attract too much attention on the streets. Despite anatomical similarities that had initially surprised both species upon first contact, the differences remained too pronounced for casual integration. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. "Ambassador Lyra, your cultural briefing begins in 5 minutes," announced the AI assistant. "Acknowledged," she replied, adjusting her environmental suit. Though Earth's atmosphere was mostly compatible with her physiology, she still required filtration for certain gases. The briefing room contained various human cultural artifacts, books, art, technology samples, all part of her ongoing education. Today's scheduled topic was family structures across human societies, presented by Dr. Adam Everett, a new addition to the cultural exchange team. When Adam entered, Lyra immediately noted his unusual demeanor. Unlike the confident diplomats and scientists typically assigned to her, he moved with a nervous energy, his eyes darting around the room before settling anywhere near her face. "Ambassador Lyra," he began, "I'm Dr. Adam Everett, specializing in comparative sociology. I'll be filling in for Dr. Harmon for the next few months." "You appear uncomfortable, Dr. Everett," Lyra observed directly, her head tilting slightly. "Is my appearance disturbing to you?" Adam flushed. "Not at all, Ambassador. I'm just not accustomed to diplomatic settings. My research usually keeps me isolated in academic environments." "I understand isolation," she replied, gesturing for him to begin. Adam's presentation was thorough, covering the diverse family structures that had developed across human cultures. His discomfort seemed to fade as he delved into his expertise, until his tablet accidentally opened an unintended file, a research paper on the neurochemistry of human intimate relationships. "I apologize," he said, quickly closing the file. "Wrong document." "Wait," Lyra interjected, her eyes widening with interest. "That file, it mentioned oxytocin and dopamine release during human mating rituals. Is this related to family structures?" Adam's face reddened again. "It's, tangentially related, yes. Human reproduction and pair bonding are connected to family formation, but that particular research focuses on the neurological aspects of human intimacy." "Fascinating," Lyra said, leaning forward. "On Astria, reproduction is entirely separated from social bonding. It's a prescribed biological function that occurs once without emotional components." Adam cleared his throat. "Human reproduction is quite different. It's often intertwined with emotional connections, pleasure responses, and social bonding. The neurochemistry is quite complex." "And humans engage in this bonding repeatedly? By choice?" Lyra asked, her voice containing a note of wonder that even she could hear. "Yes," Adam replied, his scientific curiosity seemingly overcoming his discomfort. "Most humans seek these connections throughout their lives, even when reproduction isn't the goal." Lyra sat back, her mind racing with new questions. This explains much about human art, literature, and social structures. It seems central to your species' experience. "It is for many humans, yes," Adam acknowledged. After the briefing concluded, Lyra remained seated, processing this new information. The concept of physical intimacy as a source of emotional connection rather than mere biological necessity presented an entirely new dimension to her understanding of humanity. "Dr. Everett," she called as he was gathering his materials to leave. "I would like to learn more about this aspect of human experience. It seems essential to truly understanding your species." Adam hesitated, his expression caught between professional interest and personal caution. "I can recommend some academic resources, Ambassador." No, Lyra said softly, her luminescence brightening slightly. I believe this subject requires more than academic study. I wish to understand, experientially. Adam stared at Lyra, his expression frozen between scientific curiosity and absolute panic. Experientially? He echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. Ambassador, I'm not sure you understand what you're suggesting. Perhaps not entirely, Lyra admitted, rising from her seat with fluid grace. She towered over him, her slender form casting a long shadow in the afternoon light filtering through the windows. But that is precisely why I wish to learn. My species values comprehensive understanding, and this aspect of humanity seems fundamental yet remains elusive to me. Adam placed his tablet down carefully, buying time to compose his thoughts. Ambassador Lyra, there are strict protocols governing our interactions. The diplomatic implications alone would be significant, she finished for him. I am aware, but consider this from a scientific perspective, Dr. Everett. Two sentient species, anatomically compatible in many ways, yet with vastly different approaches to pair bonding and reproduction. Isn't there value in comparative study? Her clinical framing made him pause. As a scientist, he couldn't deny the unprecedented research opportunity she presented. As a man, however, the situation was considerably more complicated. I should return to my quarters and consider your request more carefully, he said finally, gathering his materials. Of course, Lyra replied, her luminescence dimming slightly. I understand humans require processing time for unexpected proposals. That evening, Adam paced his apartment, unable to focus on anything but Lyra's request. Professional ethics warred with scientific curiosity, and if he was being honest with himself, a personal interest he hadn't anticipated developing. His secure tablet chimed with an incoming message from Lyra. With some trepidation, he opened it to find a detailed document titled Comparative Reproductive Physiology, Astrian Practices. The text was clinical, detailing how Astrians reproduced through a ritualized process that happened once in their 300-year lifespan. Partners were selected based on genetic compatibility alone, with no emotional component. The physical process took place in medical facilities, supervised by reproduction specialists. Most striking was the complete absence of pleasure or emotional bonding in the description. A second message followed. I hope this provides context for my inquiry. On Astrea, the concept of physical intimacy as emotionally significant is entirely foreign. Your species' integration of biological function with emotional connection represents an evolutionary path my people never followed, or perhaps lost along the way. Adam read the message 3 times, his scientific mind already forming hypotheses about divergent evolutionary paths and their impact on social development. His personal feelings were harder to categorize. The next morning, he requested a secure meeting with Lyra in the embassy's garden dome, a space designed to mimic Earth's natural environments while maintaining privacy. Lyra was waiting by a small pond, studying the koi fish with obvious fascination. When she noticed him approaching, her skin brightened perceptibly. Thank you for meeting me, Dr. Everett, she said. Adam, he corrected, if we're going to discuss this topic, I think we should be on a first-name basis. She inclined her head. Adam, she repeated, the name sounding musical with her accent. I've considered your request, he said carefully, and I believe we need to establish clear parameters. This would be a cultural and scientific exchange, nothing more. We would proceed gradually with detailed documentation of comparative responses and experiences. A methodical approach, Lyra agreed, her expression brightening. That aligns with both our scientific traditions. There would need to be absolute confidentiality, Adam continued. No reports to either of our governments until we've determined if there's any actual scientific value. Agreed, she said. Though I should note that Astrians are incapable of deception. It's a neurological limitation. If directly questioned by my superiors, I cannot provide false information. Adam hadn't known this about her species. It complicated matters. Then we'll need to be discreet, and we'll start with the basics, the concept of dating, casual touch, the progression of physical intimacy in human relationships. Dating, Lyra repeated the unfamiliar concept. A ritualized courtship period before mating. Something like that, Adam replied, surprised to find himself smiling. Though the goals vary widely among humans, not all dating is directed toward reproduction. Fascinating, Lyra said, her eyes brightening with genuine curiosity. When do we begin? Adam took a deep breath, acutely aware that he was about to cross a line that might change his career, his life, and possibly interstellar relations forever. We just did, he said softly. This conversation in this setting, by human standards, this could be considered a first date. Lyra looked around the garden dome with new appreciation. Then, human courtship begins with private conversation in aesthetically pleasing environments. Sometimes, Adam nodded, it's about getting to know one another in a context removed from professional obligations. And physical contact? She asked, her voice carefully neutral though her skin pulsed with subtle patterns of light that betrayed her interest. That comes later, Adam said firmly, much later. 2 weeks had passed since their conversation in the garden dome, and Adam found himself increasingly aware of how quickly his relationship with Lyra was evolving. What had begun as clinical discussions about human courtship rituals had transformed into something neither of them had anticipated. Today they sat in a private chamber of the embassy, specially designed for diplomatic functions requiring increased privacy. A holographic fireplace flickered in the corner, casting warm light across Lyra's luminescent skin. I've been reviewing the materials you provided on human courtship, Lyra said, her 7 fingers delicately tracing the edge of a tablet. The progression seems highly variable, but there appear to be consistent patterns involving increasing physical proximity. Adam nodded, trying to maintain his scientific detachment. Physical touch typically begins with brief, casual contact, handshakes, brief touches to the arm or shoulder. As comfort increases, so does the duration and intimacy of contact. We have no equivalent, Lyra said softly. On Astrea, physical contact outside of medical necessity is rare. Even parents do not touch their offspring after the initial developmental phase. Adam considered her words. That must create a very different social dynamic. We value intellectual and telepathic connection above physical proximity, she explained. But I cannot deny that observing human interactions has made me curious about what my species might be missing. A moment of silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions. Would you be comfortable with a demonstration? Adam finally asked, his heart rate increasing despite his attempts at clinical detachment. Lyra's luminescence brightened visibly. Yes, for scientific purposes, of course. Of course, Adam echoed, moving to sit beside her on the small couch. The simplest form of affectionate contact might be holding hands. May I? Lyra extended her hand, the 7 slender fingers slightly longer than human proportions. Adam gently took it in his, noting the surprisingly warm temperature of her skin and the subtle texture, smoother than human skin, with a faint pattern similar to fingerprints but more geometric. What are you experiencing? He asked, slipping back into researcher mode. Your skin temperature is higher than I expected, Lyra observed. There's a subtle electrical current. Is that normal? Adam smiled. That's just the normal bioelectrical field humans generate. What about emotional response? Any changes? Lyra's skin pulsed with waves of light. Increased heart rate, a peculiar sensation in my abdomen. Is this what humans call butterflies? Possibly, Adam replied, surprised by her physiological response. That suggests your species may be more receptive to physical stimuli than your cultural practices acknowledge. They remained hand in hand for several minutes, Lyra documenting her responses while Adam tried to maintain scientific objectivity, a task becoming increasingly difficult. The next progression in human courtship would typically involve closer proximity, Adam explained, reluctantly releasing her hand. Embracing what humans call hugging. I've observed this behavior, Lyra noted. It seems to serve both greeting and comfort functions. It can, Adam agreed. Different types of embraces convey different meanings. Would you like to try? Lyra rose to her full height, towering slightly over him. Yes, though our anatomical differences may require adjustment. Adam stood, stepping cautiously toward her. A basic embrace involves wrapping arms around each other, like this. He slowly moved closer, giving her time to process each movement, and gently placed his arms around her slender waist. Lyra hesitated briefly before mimicking his action, her long arms encircling his shoulders. The contact was tentative at first, then gradually more secure as she adjusted to the new sensation. "Your heart rate has increased significantly," she observed, her voice close to his ear. "Yes," Adam admitted, no longer able to pretend this was purely academic. "That's a common physiological response." What happened next took them both by surprise. As they separated slightly, Lyra's face remained close to his. Acting on instinct rather than research protocol, Adam leaned forward and gently pressed his lips to hers. The kiss lasted only seconds, but its effect was immediate and profound. Lyra's skin erupted in cascades of brilliant light patterns, and she stepped back, touching her lips in wonder. "That was," she began. "A kiss," Adam finished, his scientific reserve completely abandoned. "I'm sorry, I should have explained first." "No," Lyra said, her voice containing a new quality he hadn't heard before. "It was illuminating." The monitoring systems in the room recorded a spike in unusual energy readings emanating from Lyra's body. Readings that would soon trigger security protocols neither of them had considered. "I believe," Lyra said softly, "that we've made a significant discovery about interspecies compatibility." Adam could only nod, suddenly aware that they had crossed a threshold from which there would be no returning. The diplomatic quarters hummed with the quiet energy of surveillance equipment that had been hastily installed after the unusual energy readings from Lyra's quarters. In a monitoring room 3 floors below, intelligence analysts from Earth's Interstellar Security Division watched screens displaying thermal and energy signatures with growing concern. "Another spike," noted Agent Keller, pointing to a flaring pattern on the monitor. "That's the third one this week. Whatever's happening between the ambassador and Dr. Everett, it's causing unprecedented bioenergetic reactions." "Should we intervene?" asked his colleague. "Not yet. Director wants more data before we risk a diplomatic incident." Meanwhile, oblivious to the increased scrutiny, Adam and Lyra had established a routine of cultural research sessions that had long since transcended their original scientific premise. Today, they sat in Lyra's private quarters, the room's environmental controls adjusted to a compromise between their preferred settings. "Your species' concept of physical intimacy is remarkably complex," Lyra observed, her fingers intertwined with Adam's. "It's not merely the act itself, but the anticipation, the building of tension." Adam smiled, still amazed at how quickly Lyra had grasped human emotional nuances. "That's often the most powerful part, the anticipation, the gradual progression. On Astria, we have no equivalent for the way my body responds to your touch," she admitted. Her luminescence brightened as Adam traced his fingers along the delicate patterns on her forearm. "These sensations were never documented in our biological records." "Perhaps your species evolved away from these responses," Adam suggested. "Or maybe they were deliberately suppressed in your culture's development." Lyra considered this. "Our histories speak of a time thousands of years ago when our people were more passionate. There are references to a cultural reformation that prioritized intellect over physical experience." Her eyes met his. "I wonder now what we sacrificed." The intensity of her gaze made Adam's breath catch. What had begun as scientific curiosity had evolved into something neither of them had words for, something that transcended both their species' understanding of connection. "I've been analyzing the neurochemical samples we collected," Adam said, changing the subject slightly. "Your brain produces compounds remarkably similar to human oxytocin and dopamine when we're together, suggesting a universal neurological basis for pair bonding," Lyra completed his thought. "Convergent evolution despite our vastly different origins." Adam nodded. "It challenges everything we thought we knew about sentient development." "And everything my people believe about ourselves," Lyra added softly. Their scientific discussion gradually faded as physical awareness took precedence. Adam moved closer, his hand gently cupping the side of her face. Lyra's skin responded with cascades of light that had grown more complex with each encounter. "I've been authorized to extend my diplomatic mission for another Earth year," she whispered. "That's wonderful news," Adam replied, relief washing over him. The thought of her leaving had begun to create a persistent ache he couldn't ignore. "But there's more," Lyra continued, her expression growing serious. "I received communication from the High Council today. They've noticed Irregularities in my reports. They're sending an observer. Adam pulled back slightly. An observer when? Next week, they cited concerns about my excessive integration with human culture. The weight of their situation settled over them both. What had begun as a private exploration had implications that extended far beyond them. "We should be more careful," Adam said, though the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. "Perhaps," Lyra agreed. "Or perhaps it's time to consider what this means, not just for us, but for both our species." As if in defiance of the unknown consequences, Adam pulled her closer. Their kiss triggered another cascade of luminescence that pulsed through Lyra's body, registering as a massive energy surge on the monitoring equipment below. "Something's happening," Agent Keller said urgently into his communication device. "We're registering energy levels that exceed our measurement capabilities." The light surrounding Lyra and Adam intensified, engulfing them both in a radiance that seemed to exist somewhere between physical phenomenon and emotional manifestation. Neither of them noticed the urgent communications flooding into both Earth's diplomatic channels and the Astrian High Council's emergency frequencies, all centered on one alarming question. What exactly was happening between the human scientist and the alien ambassador, and what might it mean for the future of interspecies relations? In that moment, wrapped in light and each other's arms, neither Adam nor Lyra particularly cared about the answer. The interstellar diplomatic chamber had never been used for a hearing of this magnitude. Representatives from Earth and Astria sat on opposite sides of the circular room, their faces displaying varying degrees of concern, curiosity, and in some cases, outright hostility. At the center stood Adam and Lyra, their postures straight but their proximity to each other speaking volumes about their connection. "Ambassador Lyra," began High Counselor Vexus, his luminescence deliberately dimmed to indicate disapproval, "your behavior represents an unprecedented breach of Astrian protocol. Engaging in physical relations with another species violates the fundamental principles of our evolutionary path." "With respect, Counselor," Lyra responded, her voice steady despite the pressure, "our evolutionary path is not what we believed it to be. My research with Dr. Everett has revealed neurological responses that match our ancient historical records before the Great Reformation." Murmurs spread through the Astrian delegation as Lyra continued. "Our species didn't evolve away from physical bonding. We deliberately suppressed it, choosing to elevate intellectual connection at the expense of other forms of experience." On the Earth side of the chamber, General Hammond spoke next. "Dr. Everett, you were assigned to the ambassador as a cultural liaison, not to conduct unauthorized biological experiments. Your actions could have jeopardized Earth's diplomatic standing and potentially exposed humans to unknown biological risks." Adam nodded, acknowledging the criticism. "I understand the concerns, General, but what began as scientific inquiry revealed something profound, something that changes our understanding of sentient connection across different evolutionary paths." He activated a holographic display showing comparative brain scans. These images show neurological responses in both human and Astrian brains during moments of emotional and physical connection. The patterns are nearly identical, despite our species evolving on planets light years apart. The images shifted to show chemical analyses. Furthermore, the biochemical markers associated with pair bonding appear to be universal constants rather than species-specific developments. This suggests that connection itself may be a fundamental aspect of sentient evolution. Lyra stepped forward. "What Dr. Everett and I discovered accidentally may be the most significant breakthrough in interspecies understanding since first contact. We've found that beneath our physical differences lies a shared capacity for connection that transcends biological origins." The chamber fell silent as the implications of their words settled over the gathered representatives. "While your findings may have scientific merit," Counselor Vexus eventually responded, "they do not excuse the breach of protocol. Ambassador Lyra, you are hereby recalled to Astria for reassignment." "And Dr. Everett," added General Hammond, "your security clearance is revoked pending further review of your actions." Adam and Lyra exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them that needed no words. "Before you finalize those decisions," Adam said quietly, "there's something else you should know." He took Lyra's hand, triggering a soft glow that gradually intensified. The monitoring equipment in the chamber began registering increased energy readings as their connection deepened. "What you're witnessing," Lyra explained as light patterns danced across her skin and remarkably began to appear faintly on Adam's as well, "is a physiological response that neither of our species fully understands. It appears to be a form of quantum entanglement at the cellular level, a literal merging of consciousnesses." "Impossible," whispered an Astrian scientist, leaning forward with undisguised fascination. "We thought so too," Adam said. "But after repeated contact, my neurological patterns have begun to mimic Astrian patterns, and Lyra has developed increased sensitivity to human emotional cues." Lyra's voice took on a new authority. "What we've discovered isn't just about reproduction or physical intimacy. It's about the fundamental nature of connection between sentient beings. By separating ourselves from physical connection, my people have been limiting their potential for deeper understanding." The light surrounding them continued to build, casting the entire chamber in a soft glow that seemed to affect everyone present. Heart rates synchronized, breathing patterns aligned, and for a brief moment, the artificial divisions between species seemed to dissolve. When the light finally faded, the mood in the chamber had transformed. Scientific curiosity had replaced diplomatic caution, and even the most skeptical representatives leaned forward with new interest. "Perhaps," Counselor Vexus said slowly, "we have been too hasty in our judgment. This phenomenon deserves further study." General Hammond nodded in reluctant agreement. A joint research initiative might be appropriate under proper supervision. As the representatives began discussing the logistics of a formal research program, Adam leaned close to Lyra. "Do you think they understand what this really means?" he whispered. Lyra's luminescence pulsed with a pattern he now recognized as amusement. "They will, eventually. Some truths can only be understood through experience." Together they stood at the center of a new beginning, not just for themselves, but for both their worlds. What had begun as a curious exploration of human intimacy had revealed something far more profound. That across the vast distances of space, the capacity for connection might be the one truly universal constant.